Happy Painday, everyone! I've never been one for celebrating April Fools, so instead I've decided that from here on in, on this channel, April the 1st shall be referred to as Painday, a day in which we celebrate Payday 2 at its absolute worst, torturing ourselves with mods that make the game now and unplayable. Last year, the rules of Painday stipulated that we had to complete 3 random heists in a row, whilst equipped with random builds, random weapons, and, worst of all, as a random heister. Losing my boy Jimmy was such a hit to morale, I'm not sure how we ever made it through. This year, I'm doubling down. Same rules for success, clear 3 random contracts in a row on Death Wish with no AI assistance, but this time, I'm keeping Jimmy, and instead of randomizing my perk deck or skills, my weapons will constantly be changing with every kill. Do you ever remember playing Gun Game back in Call of Duty? Think that, but in Payday. Each time I pick up a kill, my current weapon will be switched out for another within my inventory, and it just so happens my inventory is full of a copy of every single weapon in the game. Also, just like last year, our starting loadout will be similarly randomized thanks to Hopip's player randomizer. For a quick rundown of the rules, our objective is to complete 3 random heists in a row on Death Wish with no team AI helping us out, and both the player randomizer and gun game mods installed. We also use Random Contract by Kknowley to ensure we have no control over the heist we're given. To actually insert a clause for failure so we're not going forever, once a heist has been played, it cannot be replayed, meaning we need to reach that 3 streak before running out of heist. Stealth heists are fair game, but we'll really need to pray to the RNG gods to get through them. Finally, because the gun game mod can be slightly clunky, I've decided to allow myself a fixed build and perk deck to help out functionally. I've gone for Hacker Copycat as the massively increased weapon swap speed makes the weapon transition much smoother, and the Pocket ECM might give an opportunity to progress from those almost impossible to use weapons. For the build, I've ensured access to all the most important solo skills, including FAKs, Jokers, Feigned Death, and Messiah, alongside a bunch of points dumped into crit to help boost all potential weapons, although the odds of actually getting any use out of low blow are slim. Courtesy of my stolen user on Twitter, here's a little tier list with my expected relative power rankings for the random weapons we can roll. Specials should be monstrous if we can avoid getting stuck on some sort of medieval bow, as should the Thanatos or LMGs, but there are plenty of very weak pistols and low damage snipers that could be a real issue if we end up switching to them when facing down large threats such as bulldozers. Heading into the first heist, Border Crossing, we get to see the mod in action, finally forcing me to not just use the Lion's Roar and 5.7 pistol. Immediately we can see just how smooth it is, especially with Copycat. I want to thank Kknowley for creating the original mod, as well as Captain Alpha and Off Your Rocker for their help in fixing my crash issues, and actually providing an updated version of the mod, which is the one linked in the description if you want to try it out for yourself. There are a few peculiarities that are worth mentioning though from a functionality and ruling standpoint. Basically, if you're already mid-animation, the game is unable to activate the weapon swap process, meaning you can theoretically go from sprinting, to firing, to reloading, to actually keep your current weapon for much longer than intended. I will not be abusing this unintended feature to retain a particularly powerful gun, but I am allowed to complete a multi-killing spray with a gun instead of awkwardly trying to swap between every kill. Also, for whatever reason, if you have a bag on your back, the mod won't activate. It took me a little while to work this out, but shouldn't influence the run tremendously. That out the way, in the meantime, you've been watching Border Crossing going surprisingly well until I ended up shield blocked, a real nuisance unit type on Death Wish. Fortunately, Feigned Death does keep us going, and I end up getting a shield-piercing repeater to take my nemesis down straight after, but this is just a sign of things to come. Into the second half of the heist, snipers become the real problem, making it incredibly difficult to lug the assault rifles across the courtyard. I got stuck with a cross-kill chunky for a little while before I'd worked out that the bag was preventing a weapon swap, which honestly just made things harder. Eventually I made it back into the hangar and was lucky enough to roll the saw, which whilst not a great weapon for picking up kills, can be used to open up loot cages and speed up the securing process. This heist can be a nightmare though. I'm relieved it doesn't pop up on my usual challenge run series, using almost all my first aid kits to try and stay afloat. Eventually I was bullied to the ground by a dozer, auto-revived twice in the space of about 2 seconds, and forced to flee. This did give me the opportunity to secure the last bits of loot, but trying to refuel the plane was a fruitless task at this point with no healing left, especially when I was forced into one of the worst weapons in the game, the English longbow, at a fairly inopportune moment, going down permanently shortly after. What a start, an almost 40-minute long failure. Painday is truly upon us. Next up we rolled the Ukrainian Prisoner heist. Clearly we're only getting the newer DLC heists, which is fine by me as I don't get to play them half as often in a challenge run setting. Rolling a couple of pistols initially, it was possible for me to showcase a little randomized stealth. As I'll be permanently wearing the suit, and there are more high than low concealment weapons in the pool, this is a genuinely viable strategy on this run, picking up a kill and switching to a suppressed Heather SMG before clearing the initial objective and freeing Vlad without the alarm being sounded. This wasn't sustainable throughout, but did give me a head start on the heist, easily bringing Vlad back from the beyond and stumping my way through the left side of the map. Whilst defending the power during the office hack, I had some top tier luck, switching to the Basilisk with poison grenades at the perfect time to control the entire building, popping this minigun dozer with unseen strike crits, and then rolling to the North Star to slam 3 shields in a row. Once again, I took the left route, landing an absolutely sumptuous platypus collateral before heading out for escape next to the docks. Switching into the flamethrower here was perfectly timed, as in one spray down I could incapacitate half the cops on the map and roll through a bunch of weapons thanks to the damage over time, clearing our first heist of the run in the process. After that great triumph, it was only natural that I'd head into Heat Street for the next heist and roll into the underwhelming Shimano 88s in front of a black dozer, being taken straight to the ground without a chance of Messiah activating. So, back to square one we instantly go. Bank Heist Deposit was where the Payday gods chose to send me next, unfortunately wasting my Bank Heist roll, a simple heist, on just Heist 1 out of the 3 I needed to clear for the challenge. Despite being given an excellent starting loadout, stealth was a bust when I decided to tase the manager in full view of security, but even so, this wasn't going to be that difficult. I had some good luck switching off the 5.7 into the KSP just in time to murk this schooldozer, enjoyed a highly satisfying minigun spraydown, taking full advantage of that switch, and managed to showcase one of my favourite features of the mod, failing to dent another dozer with a pair of underpowered pistols before turning around to quickly switch them out straight into the microgun, a much more apt weapon for the job. I considered trying to re-roll into the saw for the deposit boxes, but in the end just decided to bite the bullet and hold down the F key for a minute instead. A simple heist clear in the end. Transport Park is another heist that should be easy enough to complete, even with my rotating conveyor belt of guns. I got to enjoy the minigun to its fullest again, but really should have drank that in more, as for most of the rest of the heist I was simply holding F to lockpicks and deposit boxes. Even more frustrating, at some point the cops finally started paying attention to me, punching me straight out of a 15-second long animation, which really grinded my gears. Instead of focusing up after this incident, I started playing even more sloppy, completely forgetting that my Ismo is equipped with tombstone slugs which can't pierce shields, resulting in an embarrassing failure on one of the simplest heists in the game. This was disappointing, as not only did it set us back again, it also wasted 2 of the most completable heists on the roster, and I didn't relish the idea of Birth of Sky being my rebound heist. What I did get to enjoy was a pretty slick weapon gauntlet on the plane. This is where the gun game mod really shines and is at its most enjoyable. Going for the skydive, I was nearly wiped off the map on the way down, which honestly shouldn't be possible, but beat cops are so damn OP on Death Wish. After surviving that scare, I started loading money back on the broken pallet, at one point performing a magic trick to turn 1 Compat 5 into 2. Pretty impressive, and the closest we'll get to rolling into the same weapon consecutively during this challenge. Until the snipers start spawning, this heist is really quite easy, although facing down 2 minigun dozers is far from ideal without a set build. Luckily, I was able to switch into the Commando 101 to take care of that problem. I'm so used to snipers being a real issue on these challenges, but for once I had access to a full arsenal of ranged weapons, so if I could just swap to them at the right time, they were easy enough to take out. Once again, the diesel engine showed its range of dynamic AI, as this heavy swap placed his head directly in front of my scope to catch a bullet aimed at another dozer. Impressive bravery from that lad. Funnily enough, this was actually a worthwhile sacrifice for Team SWAT, as I was forced to switch into a pistol, and that just didn't have the range to take out the initial target. Even so, I was able to airlift the final pallet and gain access to the sewers, commencing the most messy scramble we've seen so far. A surprise saw switch could have been disastrous, but I was able to grab a quick kill with it and keep rolling with ranged weapons, faced down by the bad RNG of a triple skulldozer spawn. The pocket ECM did its very best to carry, but I was forced backwards from here, needing my Messiah charge to self-revive from this dozer, before eventually being body blocked to the abyss, not far from safety. Looking back, I should have just rushed this section and not tried to fight back so intensely, but this was a tough L to take, again, failing to get a point on the board. Lost in Transit was an exciting proposition next as one of the most recent heists added to the game. I came closer than I'd like to admit to timing out during the initial point of no return section of the heist, but was able to blow up the bridge and dispatch of both early minigun dozer spawns. Yet again, I had a perfectly timed source switch which allowed me to access the officers a little earlier than usual. From there, I pushed back outside and started to move the printing plates. Upon exiting the warehouse, I was absolutely peppered by one of the most accurate snipers I've ever seen. I'm not even sure snipers are meant to be able to shoot as quick as this guy was. Whilst I could take him out, the damage was already done as his mate on the opposite roof forced out an early feign death activation. This dozer got a nasty surprise as my wasp transformed into an RPG out of nowhere, blasting him straight into Payday 3. In retaliation, I was blasted straight into Rock City by this green dozer who took me down in about 0.1 of a second. So much for that grace period, eh? Fortunately, I was able to prop Messiah to save the run, but that was almost a disaster. One of the best things about playing with this mod is how it can create entirely new gameplay possibilities, as I landed my sickest ever FPS no-scope on this sniper thanks to a surprise weapon switch. Absolute destruction. From there, things seemed to settle down as the heist looked all but complete, until I decided to stand directly in front of a taser who would have taken me down had my Joker not intervened with a clutch knockback. Once again proving why Jokers are all but necessary to complete runs such as this one. With the second chance he'd given me, I sprinted directly to the train and activated the escape, notching up completion number 1 once again. Unfortunately, the game decided to up the ante on heist number 2 with Reservoir Dogs, a challenging multi-day affair. After pulling off the melee primary glitch early into day 1, I was able to enjoy an even stranger version of it, where due to my constantly changing weapon, the Shackle just existed as an attachment for every gun I switched to. My favourite being the compound bow, which turned it into some sort of huge growth coming out of my eye. Feeling like one of the Omen twins, I absolutely demolished this dozer with a crit before escorting Mr. Pink into the warehouse. Day 1 didn't come as much as a challenge once I'd found the diamonds, escaping with relative ease onto the more difficult day 2. The initial ambush on this day is wild at the best of times, but with a constantly revolving arsenal of weapons, it was even crazier than usual, slamming a bunch of gas into the elevators, but still getting pushed out up against the school dozers. Once again, a Bronco cop took me down, forcing out Messiah just 1 minute into the heist, but we weren't giving up there. Eventually I was able to push back and start up the process to access the vault. Once again, snipers were less of a threat than usual, meaning I could start moving the diamonds as soon as I gained access to them. Securing the bags across the road was still a challenge, although somehow, using the Kang revolver, I saved the situation by propelling this sniper sideways off a building. With him out the way, I was able to create the space necessary to move the rest of the bags across the road, getting insanely lucky with feigned death once again deep into the heist. This good fortune was all I needed to secure the final diamonds and flee to the escape van, claiming success from the jaws of defeat, and leaving us just one more heist from victory. Surely Election Day couldn't be that bad. Surely Day 1 was an absolute breeze, accidentally going loud, but that just meant I got to enjoy more moments like this one. The snipers did their best to bring me down, but it was never really in any doubt. Day 2 would obviously be the same. I survived this green dozer even though I was stuck with a light crossbow, and nothing could be worse than that, right? I mean, I had my pocket ECM, so even standing point blank I was in no danger. Oh, those are DB Grims. They do no damage to dozers. Oof, that's got to be karma for abusing those guns back in the day. I love the sadistic way the dozer crouches down and shoves his weapon directly in my face to ensure there's absolutely no chance of me getting back up. What a painful way to fail heist number 3, and funnily enough I can actually blame my randomized weapon. Fair play gun game, fair play. Of course you're all excited to see me have to go back to square one, so it's wins all around for everyone other than me. I was once again working towards a tight deadline on this one. You can see my frustration rising to the surface when I was downed under a minute into the next heist, a transport downtown. Again, with dozers being the primary culprits. On the plus side, we were gifted a Santa's Workshop next, one of the lowest risk heists in the game. Just try and ignore me getting absolutely brutalised when attempting to hide behind a hostage. That incident made me a little more humble for the rest of the heist, securing the minimum 4 presents and making a run for the escape as soon as it became available. Scarface Mansion was handed to me next, far from an easy heist, but still very manageable if approached in the right way. I was easily able to handle the exterior section of the heist, gaining access to the mansion, landing this saucy collateral and pushing forward with ruining Ernesto Souza's day. Once the paintings were burned and cars dropped in the ocean, I blew up his turrets almost instantly, and then spent over a minute smacking Souza with a plastic slot lever and tickling him with a Shimano 88 before eventually he went down. We had a little incident with a pair of minigun dozers shortly after, but these guys were so preoccupied with my jokers, it was surprisingly simple for me to wander up and banish them to the Shadow Realm with akimbo Krinkovs. From there, the only remaining goal was not to be sniped, which was easier than it had been in the past, making for a surprisingly anticlimactic clear of the mansion. Of course, the game decided to send me on the yacht heist next, a stealth-only heist that would be far from a walk in the park. On the plus side, I seem to have about 35 detection risk, which really wasn't that bad all things considered. That was until I was forced to perform my first kill, a problem in that it took my suppressor and left me with a far less concealable shotgun. This slip set off a chain reaction as I was getting instantly spotted by every guard I walked past, leaving them cuffed to avoid having to shoot. In the end, I simply ran out of pages after only securing 4 out of the 8 required bundles, failing the heist soon after. The most frustrating thing about this failure was how decent a hand I was handed before throwing it away carelessly. Now well, that streak wasn't meant to be. Onwards to Firestarter, which I accidentally bought on death sentence, leading to me unsurprisingly melting at the hands of the Mendozas. Whoops, glad I wasn't on a streak for that one. Then I rolled up to Car Shop with 75 detection risk and was caught immediately. At the very least, this removes a stealth-only heist from the pool, so I suppose this instant failure could have been worse. Big Bank is where I was taken next, a heist that really isn't that difficult on challenge runs such as this one. I went loud immediately after bumping into this security guard who was doing a great job of blending in like a sieve. Not a problem though, as I was quickly able to locate the keycard and start searching for the right computer. Whilst the rest of the bank went running, apparently this lady was unbothered, moisturised, happy, in her lane, focused and flourishing, just completely unconcerned at the chaos taking shape around her. After rolling into the saw early, I took the opportunity to head up to the roof and open the door to avoid having to drill it, although this left me at the mercy of the snipers without a ranged weapon, requiring feigned death to save the attempt. After making it back inside, more strange events started to take place around this mysterious bank teller, with cops straight up disappearing from existence, as even this schooldozer wasn't immune to her Pond Sage powers. She seemed to have put some sort of curse on my game, as of course the final computer I interacted with was the right one to start the time lock. Heading back to the roof, I enacted my revenge on Sniper Kind with a sweet crossbow kill, before dropping back inside and being forced to use my Messiah charge when left with a less than ideal incendiary China puff switch. Despite using most of my resources up to this point, I was able to gain access to the rear of the bank, attach this security to a wall, and burn my way into the vault. It took a while as I was relying on drills, but eventually I gained access to 4 money bags and completed Big Bank by escaping down the elevator hatch. As we're embarking on what feels like a whirlwind adventure of past challenge run classics, it's time to head to Panic Room now. I was honestly kind of excited to see how the gun game mod would handle the Sniper Gauntlet, ambushing the ambushes and easily handling the soaring section of the heist first before heading up to the roof to go to work. Honestly, this was unbelievably satisfying, taking down each sniper with a unique weapon, sometimes having to relocate or switch out to more of a ranged option to do the deed. That surprising tactical nuance made this one of the most enjoyable heists on the challenge, and of course there were plenty of opportunities for me to also indulge my more murderous side and blast my way through units up close and personal. After dealing with all 50 in the snipers, there was still a number of times where things could have gone wrong, but I'm fairly practiced at this heist by now, wiping out an entire room with the commando, and then getting an ideal RPG switch to clear half the roof in a single shot. This created the space necessary to secure the panic room, and along with it, my escape, meaning once again, we were just a single heist from victory. Boiling Point was the destination, a really tough Deathwish heist, but with my potential firepower, I didn't expect too many pitfalls on this one. I even rolled the golden spoon for all you spoon enthusiasts asking for a spoon-only run. This is as close as you're getting for the time being. I usually managed to blow through the wall and gain access to the compound with the EMP sitting outside. This was a simple holdout, rushing a minigun dozer right at the end to create space to run inside. The Akimbo Heathers destroyed his health pool, but finally I get a chance to showcase how monstrous the unique Deathwish tasers are on this heist, as they 3-shot my health after the dozer had worked down my armor, and due to the uncontrollable recoil of my Akimbos, I was unable to land a shot to activate Messiah and bring me back from the dead. Another crushing failure, explaining why Boiling Point is never a heist you should take for granted on Deathwish. Starting out from the bottom again, we have to tackle Slaughterhouse now, a painful solo heist due to its bag moving requirement. I managed to make good use of the saw offensively for once, tearing up the dozer who exited the armoured truck wolf style before getting to drilling the gold safe. The Thanatos proved why I valued it so highly on this challenge by landing a mighty collateral during this initial holdout, and the Incendiary Grims were able to showcase that they're not so bad so long as you're not facing down a dozer. Unfortunately, this heist also loves throwing copious numbers of dozers at you, leading to numerous awkward gunfights up against them. Even so, I was making progress, securing the first 3 bags of gold before the snipers spawned in. On the run back, the Benetti showcased why pistols are generally not the best switch-ins up against school dozers, just about escaping from this tricky situation with my life intact thanks to an FAK. I was having a nightmare switching into a weapon that was well suited for taking out these snipers on the second half of the heist, which led to me getting impatient and just pushing outside with my Grims, ending up tased, sniped, flashed, then auto-revived, tased again, with feigned death saving the day once more, only to be tased for a 3rd time and still unable to actually work out where the taser was. Eventually, I managed to activate Messiah for one last life, at which point the taser finally revealed himself to me, but he'd already managed to drain my entire ammo pool, leaving me at his mercy and ending the heist. That's genuinely the best individual performance of a single unit in Payday 2 I can ever remember facing. That taser was on me anytime I tried to do anything. What a beast. Failing here was frustrating, but not the end of the world, as at least it saves me lugging even more gold bags around. Instead, we get a chance to head to Shackle auction for what is the most successful stealth attempt so far. With my opening loadout, I seem to only have about 20 detection risk, meaning I was able to lockpick this door right under a guard's nose. This extra stealthing freedom allowed me to access the vault before just taking out the auctioneer in broad daylight to get instant access to his office. In a repeat of the Lost in Transit incident, a green dozer managed to blow me away in a single shot, needing to messiah myself back to life immediately. During the hack, a small battalion of bulldozers decided to simultaneously spawn from all angles, but thanks to the power of the Falcon and Mateva, when combined with crits, I was quickly able to thin the herd, grabbing the vault code and forcing my entrance under the cover of KSP Flyer. From there, I simply planted myself in a store cupboard and turned this into an impossibly close quarters holdout, as the cops started climbing up the walls to try and join me in this little 2x2 room. Fortunately, I just about had the firepower to hold out and escape to the chopper. Of course, instead of being given a nice gift of a heist, I was sent next on the high-risk multi-day Hoxton breakout. High risk for the cops anyway, specifically this woman's hair, which went full-on wacky waveable inflatable at the mere sight of me. From playing this heist over the years, day 1 has actually emerged as the shorter but riskier of the 2 days, meaning here is where I had to be playing my best gun game. Unfortunately, every single SWAT turret that could decided this run would be the perfect time to spawn, resulting in me mostly hiding behind the truck and hoping for the best. On the final road before the parking lot, I was repeatedly switched into the saw, resisting at first as it just seemed too high risk during the drilling objective, but eventually I decided this was an opportunity, hiding out and relying on my jokers to secure the truck's movement, whilst I held onto the key to not failing the car park. This sort of worked, as I was able to get inside and start sawing the doors, only to miss out on the control room at every turn. Instead, having to spend the full 20 seconds lockpicking through each remaining door until I eventually happened upon the Skulldozer's hideout. He got the full force of my freedom stick, and from there I was easily able to push on to day 2. Here the greatest risk is always the FBI spawns, who did tear me to shreds as is customary, but not quite enough to take me down. From there I went off to analyse the clown case evidence, went big game hunting with one of the strongest weapons of the game, downloaded some encryption keys and spent a little time pretending to be the head of the FBI. A walk in the park really, and this mob was already providing me with some memorable Payday 2 moments, handing me the minigun right in front of a dozer and giving me the chance to showcase who the real alpha is. Yeah, it's him. Using a pocket ECM is true Sigma behaviour. With that triumph, I grabbed the server, found a final keycard on my way out, and for the 3rd time secured a 2nd consecutive completion on the run. What joy should await me on this fine payday after the game obviously rolled me nightclub or something. I was already starting to daydream of returning to my basic meta build and never looking back. Of course it was Goat Simulator. I don't think it can get worse than that. What you won't believe from the gameplay is that I'm actually 100% trying my best not to die. Within 13 seconds, I'd gone down twice, only to be dragged back up again by feigned death, missing a point-blank RPG shot and needing a 2nd to wipe this fella out of existence and revive a 3rd time with Messiah. I genuinely checked my difficulty at this point thinking I'd rolled death sentence by accident, but no, this is just how hard Deathwish beat cops hit on this godforsaken portion of the heist. It goes without saying that I was overrun a 4th and final time, failing the heist in record time, and setting myself back to the start of the entire challenge. A true Painday gift from me to you. Break time as that one crushed my spirit, but later that day I headed into Train Heist, one of the most cumbersome heists in the game. As I was already starting to run out of viable options to take on at this point, I was certainly not throwing away an important heist intentionally, but I wasn't exactly what you'd call distraught when I traded blows with such synchronicity that this guy managed to take me down at the exact moment I did the same to him, leaving me with no viable targets to revive from. Oh no, I guess you won't be able to see me spend half an hour on this heist only to be sniped right beside the escape. What a shame. Instead, the diamond was a nice little layup to get us on the road to challenge run victory, being one of the easier heists in the game, both loud and stealth. Once again, my starting loadout left me at around 25 detection risk, with a silencer to boot, meaning it was an ideal opportunity to showcase my randomised stealthing chops once again. To avoid an unwanted switch, I just forced the cameraman to surrender before moving on with the heist, soon finding out that civilian kills also count towards weapon switches, so much for that plan. Further into the heist, I attempted the same thing with this guard in a less than ideal location, taking the risk and just leaving him cuffed in plain sight, naturally resulting him getting spotted whilst hacking the final door. Fortunately, this security was hard of sight and couldn't work out why this might be a suspicious situation without walking up to within inches of his cuffed friend, taking a hatchet to his head for his troubles, which he probably also didn't see coming. This was enough to gain access to the Diamond Sanctum, where after all that finessing, I managed to step on a tile and set off the alarm. Fortunately, the diamond itself was already secured, meaning I could basically just hold out until the chopper arrived, and it carried us to heist completion number 1. Counterfeit and Florida was our next destination, another heist with a nice mellow stealth start. By the time the cops had worked out what was going on, I was already setting up the drill and hose to get water pumping those printing plates free. I've never seen a heavy SWAT nope out quite like this at the sight of a group of curs, but I suppose when that little pea shooter can turn into a high caliber sniper rifle at the drop of a hat, I can appreciate his foresight. I did have a bit of a showdown trying to protect the pump, but the timely RPG switch helped me clear the way, blowing the safe to pieces and escaping into the sewers with the loot. This dozer was consistently living 1 second in the past, making it possible for me to circle strafe and melt him before rushing to the final escape grate. Alright, so here we go. Heist number 3, and it's time for a little mercy at last. White Xmas is not a difficult heist, but was exactly what I needed to see, with at least a third of Payday 2's heists already behind me. Fortunately, I'd become a bit of a savant at this mod after hours of failed attempts that had gone before me, clearing all threats off the map with surprising fluidity at long last. Snipers were no longer an issue, and in under 5 minutes Harudin was already safe and secure. After 6.5, the chopper was back, but I wasn't done just yet, rubbing it in by going for extra loot, a cardinal sin on any challenge run. For my hubris, I was so nearly punished in the worst possible way, facing down 2 final tasers and failing to interrupt them both until the final bullet of my Holt had landed, saving the run at the very last second. This was enough of a reminder that it doesn't take much for a randomized heist to turn nasty in a heartbeat, deciding it was time to just activate the Pocket ECM to clear the heist, and this year's Painday challenge after 25 total heists. Well, that would have been anticlimactic had that been the first 3 heists of the challenge, but fortunately we were blessed with the world's worst goat simulator attempt on this fine Painday Eve. In all honesty, this challenge was not too bad compared to some I've attempted in the past, and that's in big part to how smooth the gun game mod worked. Repeatedly switching into fully reloaded weapons on each kill can be insanely powerful, not to mention that chance of randomly pulling out an RPG always keeps you interested. Whilst it took me an age to string together a streak of 3 clears in a row, I'm sure you'd still have a ton of fun if you downloaded this mod and gave a similar challenge a try. It's an ideal challenge run format to start with, as the time commitment shouldn't be huge, and the entire weapon changing mechanic is just stupid fun to play around with in any setting. One thing I noticed was the many weapons that have been sat gathering dust in my inventory for years that are well worth picking up again and shouldn't just be forgotten in favour of the shiny new toys we receive every few months. Thank you everyone for sitting through this year's Painday extravaganza. I'll endeavour to be back next year with even more suffering on Payday 3, and of course thank you to all the brilliant modders whose creations featured in this video. A challenge such as this one wouldn't be possible without you. I'll be back later this week for what's shaping up to be a busy April for Payday fans, so see you all very soon in the next one. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.